Yo.
The record button's been hit.
Oh,
So, as I was saying, my real-time experience of life. So you don't have a name on there, but oh no, you do. I can barely see
I
it.
do. Yeah.
It's Joe. We'll just call you Joe. Is that okay?
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Here's my real-time experience of life. So it's Friday morning, and every
Uh,
morning, Crystal and I, we grab a bunch of our supplements, which I want
uh,
to know what supplements you take or don't take, by the way. But
oh,
we take our supplements. One of the things is she makes these gelatins, like with for
yeah.
collagen and stuff. So we take that, and then we go before we start working. We walk to what we call the hill. So it's the
Uh,
hill, but not like the bad hill, like in Washington, D.C. Like this is like a nice
yeah.
grassy hill.
Yeah.
And we go ground and we try to get as much sun in our eyes right away to wake up our circadian clock. Anyway, so this morning we went and did that. And then there's all these dogs, right? All like everyone with their dogs. We don't have a dog, but everyone with their dogs is they're out walking them, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we're out there this morning and we have all this dog love and all this dog energy, and that's fun. And then I kind of get back, and we have some work stuff going on, right? Where my orientation can easily slide into, why is everyone stupid, right? Like that's like
Right.
I have that as like a default setting still in me.
Yeah.
And then I called one of my buddies who I used to work with, and then does a lot of work with our business now still, and we were just kind of going. Well, I was more so going off about like the zeitgeist and what's in the air and
Um,
how like the benefit of like morals and values and or some kind of principles or principled living and
yeah.
just like having some kind of guiding light for how you live. And
Some
of
kind
course,
of basis, right? Something. Right. Yeah.
so he told, so he's like, well, Matt, part of what happened here is you got old. And it's
Uh,
like,
yeah.
last night I'm eating with Crystal and I are eating dinner, and we always have these conversations. And she's like, Matt, we're at that age, dot, dot, dot. And she would just say stuff after that. And
Yeah.
it's like kind of killing my soul or
Yeah.
something. Like, and it's not killing my soul, it's killing my ego. But it's like, oh, Matt, we're at that age. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
But then it's like, or did I?
Yeah.
Right? Did I
Yeah.
sign up for this? So, anyways, Joe is a near dear friend. One of the reasons I really love you and love talking to you is you just can't stop, won't stop, like being curious.
Yeah.
So, what are you curious about right now, man? What are you into? What books, what practices, like, where's your spirit at? You
Yeah.
seem to just never stop with that stuff.
Yeah, and it's like almost like a bug that like gets you. You know what I mean? Like it's a bug that gets you. So there's this painting. It's on my parents' wall at their house, right? And I really love it. And I always saw it growing up. It was like a watercolor painting, right? And it was my mom goes, "That's you." And I'm like, "What do you mean it's me?" And the painting is of like a boy standing on a beach, like crouching down, looking at this tiny crab, right? You know what I mean? And he's got like I don't know, it's not like stuff like I would wear like in the '80s, but like it's like just general clothing and stuff like that. And it turns out my aunt, my mom's sister, was going through therapy. So I think she had probably like a Rogerian arts therapist. And she had this moment where she saw me on the beach when I was a kid, right? And like it's like something that like struck her, like about the continued like curiosity, you know what I mean, that I had. Now, I mean, knowing like my history and like what happens behind the scenes, I was probably fucking with the crap. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like I can remember at a young age, like this is how I grew up, right? So like youngest of five kids in Vegas, right? Like LDS family, Mormon family, and stuff like that. And I had this little area off to the side of the house, right? It was just like dirt and like an AC unit, right? And like I had like dug up a hole in the ground and made like a pond, like a moat that had like all these gnats in it. I was like growing sunflower seeds. I had Tonka trucks that I would take like smoke bombs and like light them off in there. Steal my brother's firecrackers, light them off. I'm like 8 years old, just like playing with fire. It was like my little boy experimental. Like this is where I'd go mess around while my mom's busy trying to raise five kids. You know what I mean? And blow stuff up and do my little experiments. So it's like that curiosity's been there like for a while, man. Like, it's
Huh.
just like there, like current stuff I'm into, like I'm reading a good amount of David Hawkins, right? So I'm
Uh,
reading that stuff. And what's interesting about him is that he sources a lot of things, right? And that's what I like about him. So it's like I really like him as a spiritual teacher, right? But kind of like the messages is like, how did this guy get to this point? Like, what did he read? Like what are
huh.
his like influence? And he does really well with like looking at those specific things. So that gets me into like reading. I'm reading a lot of Jungian stuff. There's this guy Robert Johnson because it's complicated. You read Carl Jung, and I'm just like, dude, I don't have time to read 27 volumes of like this dude's like brain just like splattered on a piece of paper. So this guy Robert Johnson does like these really short books where he breaks it down. So I'm learning about Jungian archetypes and like all this type of stuff related to that. And then yeah, so I'm doing some of that stuff, and then I started doing a Course in Miracles. You ever heard of that one?
Dude, when did you start doing that?
So I first like read like the book Course in Miracles probably had to be like 2007, 2008. I don't know if I
Yeah.
made it all the way through. Now I just jump in and do the workbook, and so I'm like 12 lessons in. I take some time, I read it and I start doing stuff like that. And I love it because it's like 2, 3 minutes. You know what I mean? It's two,
Mm.
3 minutes and you carry this thing throughout the day, right? So like
You're doing it on your own or with the group?
I'm doing it on my own. I do it with Kay. I do it with my wife, right? So
Awesome.
like, yeah, we'll sit there and we'll do that little thing, and it's just like take like, and they're like 1, 2 minute exercises. Like I love it. You know what I mean? So, and I'm trying to read the first part of the book, but like I'm like, I don't know. I just like the workbook. I can like jump straight to that. It's like eventually you get like so much like spiritual training. It's like, I don't know if I need this anymore. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can dabble and I think it's fascinating. I agree with the concept because growing up like in a Christian household, like Mormons are Christians. People don't realize that, but Mormons are Christians. Right. You know what I mean? It's interesting because it gives me a way to reframe that basis of faith that I grew up with in a different type of way that makes more sense to me, right? So it's more of like everything you kind of got like the exoteric version, then you got like the esoteric version. That's just kind of like a deeper form of spirituality. There's some parts about it I don't like and I don't agree with it. And now I just say, just pass that off. I don't need to like, I just let it go, right? Because you're never going to find like it's rare to find perfect teachings. Like the further you go along, you see like the faults in people's books, right? Doesn't mean they're not good books and they're extremely like helpful, but you see like the faults, right? Like I don't know. You ever read Four Agreements? You read that one?
Long time ago.
Long
Yeah.
time ago, right? Yeah. And like I read it and I was like, oh, this is like totally cool. But there's this one part where he goes off about something related to like sexuality. I'm like, that's like weird. That has nothing to do with anything. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's human, right? He's still got a hang up about something, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like there's certain things like that. Like sometimes Course in Miracles gets a little like too like polarized for me, like bipolar in certain moments. So I just go, okay, scrap that, go on to the next, right? But the workbook, I'm like, workbooks, this thing's pretty like solid, right? Like this is good. I'm talking about like the first part of the book, right? So that one's kind of like a revisit for me.
Yeah.
It may have been like beyond me, like in 2007, 2008, whenever I read it. And now it's like clicking and making more sense to me. Hawkins is the same way. I found him like I think it was 2007. I went to a seminar of his and read Power versus Force. I read his second book, like part of that, and I couldn't really like understand it all the way. I went to his third book, like which is like subjective reality or something like that, and it was just like way beyond me. But now I can just go back to his books, and I'm like, oh, I can just bang through this stuff now. Like I get it. Like his third book was actually like hard for me, where I had to like put it down. It was like so disruptive to my paradigm, where I'm like, oh, that's like it's like messing me up like a little too much. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got to stop and like sit on that type of stuff. So I think just like a combination of that. And but I mean, I've done tons of stuff. I've done like week long retreats, like Dispenza, Shambhala stuff. I've gone to stuff where I'm just like, what the fuck did I just go to, right?
Yeah.
But to me, like that has value. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's, you know, yeah, I've tried to do like astral travel things, stuff like that, messed around with that. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna shelve that for a little bit.
Did you travel anywhere? Where did you
No,
travel to?
I slept like great though. Like I just great. Absolutely great, man. Absolutely
Well,
great.
you didn't travel anywhere other than to great slumber
Yeah,
the
yeah,
evening
yeah.
of the
So
practice.
to me, it was a win. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
and the trip about that is that I even tried it with like a fitness tracker on, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like and the fitness tracker is pretty solid. It's like you're asleep, you're like it's like reliable. And it's like and like I was out and it's just like yeah, you're not asleep, but I was out. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like yeah, so there's stuff like that like but it was saying you weren't asleep, but I was like coming out of the sleep. So it put me in such a deep state that I was like, "Oh, that's like a it's like an in-between place." 'Cause I think it was where it was putting me at. And that was with the what's that guy's name, dude? What's that dude's name? Anyways, it's the guy who
Mr. Astral.
Robert Monroe. That's who it is. Yeah, Robert Monroe, like the
Never
Monroe
heard of
tapes.
him.
So he's the guy that where they did the CIA CIA training things at the Monroe Institute,
What
right?
year? What year was that?
There's tons of docs. I could send it to you. I think it was like 70s, like all the way through the 90s. You know what I
Oh, is
mean?
that so? That's kind of like during and after some of the Warren Commission stuff. Even that was like,
Yeah,
hey, you kind of caught us. We did some MK Ultra stuff, like post Project Chaos for sure, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, and it was legit. They were using it to make military decisions. Like instead of like a
Yeah.
satellite, you just astral project and see what these people are doing. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So
in the zeitgeist right now, dude, isn't it? Like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
like the remote viewing idea is
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's a big one that's come up again. I've heard a bunch of podcasts on it, you know.
yeah,
Like I just kind of like stumble on these stuffs like a lot of times even before I'm like, oh, like what the hell is this? And I'm like, oh, but that's a big one that's coming back. Like you've seen it on Danny's podcast. People
yeah,
talk about it a lot. I've seen it on Rogan and people are talking about it, you know. So there's another guy, I think his name is like Ingo Swann, who is like the god of
huh,
like doing it and stuff like that. There was a lot of highly trained people where they would astral project to like the moon, right? To see what's going on the dark side of the moon was the most recent one I heard. And then the whatever over there was like, you can't come back here, right? And how the story goes is one dude went out there, right? And now he's just been in a coma for like 35 years. You know what I'm saying? Like you drew the short straw, man. You like they kept on pushing it, and they're
or
like,
maybe the long straw, dude. Maybe he's
yeah,
having
well,
like a disco party every
yeah,
night
it
with
could
no
be, man.
consequences, you know?
Yeah, it's only getting free rent and stuff like that. And his family paid off and taken care of for all time and eternity, you know? Well, he just like
Yeah,
sits
he
there, you
found
know?
the real reality, man, and we're
Yeah,
over here living in this one.
I want to know if he comes back, you know what I mean? And what has he got to say? You know what I'm saying? So like, but yeah, that's a common thing. And with me, like I was, I got sober a while ago and I just like, I said, and I was just kind of imparted to me that like, hey, like spirituality is a part of this thing, right? And I
Mm,
went to a wellness treatment center in 2005. And being from Vegas, like there's a lot of lights. I probably hadn't seen like, more than 3 stars in like 5, 6 years. You know what I mean? And I was in southern Utah in this thing, and I meditated, and like I just had like this like sense of peace, right? That like was just completely foreign to me, and I saw nature for like what it was. And I saw so much beauty in a tree and like all these things like that. And they brought that book, the Paulo Coelho book, The Alchemist, out there. I
yeah,
started reading some other like recovery literature. I actually read like Book of Mormon and Bible stuff out there too, and I was like, I could see like truth like within that, and it just kind of struck me. It's just like, okay, this is where I need to go with this. I need to be open minded to like anything like this, right? So I ebb and flow with it, and because like so like there's a difference between like oh I'm just going to try and astral travel and like oh I'm going to try and live a spiritual life. Those are two totally different things, right?
how so?
So like one is like Hawkins calls it, I think it's a good way to describe it, as the astral circus, right? So I can get very like distracted with, things that have like complicated sets of symbols and like these mystery schools and like or like maybe I could be like taking ayahuasca every weekend and all these type of things. But like the spiritual path is just like to me, it's just like does this have to do with me loving the world better, right? You know what I mean? Or does it have with me trying to just escape into like higher states of consciousness? You know what I mean?
So intention is kind of what you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
speaking
Intention
to.
and like, is it applicable or was like, hey, was that just fun? You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I'm like, that's like worth it to me. I'm like, ah, that was fun. You know, that was a trip. You know, like,
Well,
but like,
how do you always, it's interesting. I'm having this weird on my right side. I'm
yeah,
having this eye thing happening, and I'm like, what does that mean? Right? Like my left and right. I'm always like kind of analyzing my left and right hemispheres to see like
yeah,
whatever's happening, and I'm like, so what Joe's talking about? What does this have to do with it? How do you feel like you fully ever know? Like, how solidified do you feel, dude, into what your intention is in any given moment? You know what I mean? Like, are you ever like are you like, I'm 100% that this right here is my intention? Are you like, I think it's 99%.
I think I'm like more like 99%. And here's the thing is I think you just need to do the best that you can,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? And I think the willful act, the demonstrated by willingness to try and sincerely set an intention is the best that you can do. You know what I mean? Which is all that matters, right? So like there's times I'll be like I'll pray, you know, for something, I'll go, all right, that was weak. Let me go back to that again. Okay, let me go back to that again. You know what I mean? And try and do those things. Or the same thing with like any type of like therapy work. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like half measured that. I kind of like gave
Yeah.
like I didn't give like 100%. You know?
Like
Uh,
there's a knower.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's kind of what you're saying, right? The
yeah.
E. Well, how do you define that for you?
The knower.
Yeah, what is that from your point of view?
Um, So I kind of the way I kind of see it is like I don't know if you've ever had like breathwork sessions or meditation sessions where everything is like all the lines just like blur with everything, and you realize everything's it's just like a whole. It's like it's a completeness, right? You know, like something like that. Like all the form is like an illusion in sense. It's like tapping into like that type of thing, right? It's hard to describe something that's like beyond like
It's
what
whatever
you
that it's
language.
whatever that sensation is. Is that kind of like whatever that experience is the knower.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and like once I would try and like describe it or put into words for somebody, it's gone, right? At that deep type of level, right? It's just like it's beyond what I could put like into like what I could write on a piece of page. I couldn't like write
Yeah.
what it is. I could become pretty close in talking about it, but the actual experience of it like it is lost,
Well,
right?
I swear, dude, Deepak, the other day I never listen to Deepak anymore. But
Yeah.
when I got into reading, right, a bunch of spiritual books when I was kind of taught to early on. I read The Third Jesus, and I was into like more of the him and who's that cat, the Power of Now dude who just
Eckhart Tolle or
yeah, it
Tolle,
looks like he's out of
whatever. Who
out
knows what
of
his real last name is,
yeah,
right?
he's from Lord of the Rings. So all that kind of vibe, and then other dudes. But the other day, a YouTube video came on with Deepak, a more recent one, and the one liner, which is what you're saying, what I'm hearing is, yeah, God speaks in silence. Everything else is a poor translation, which is not
Yeah. Oh,
attributed to Deepak, but
yeah.
yeah, to
Yeah.
your point.
Yeah. Yeah. So like and it's kind of like it's like sound isn't sound if it doesn't have a backdrop of silence, right? You know? Like it's like what is it, right? Like there's music in the silence within like the space. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
sound kind of like folds out and then like folds back in, and like that's just like how it works, right? Um,
Uh,
yeah. So like yeah. So that's one of the things I'll do sometimes when I meditation is I'll think about like, oh, it's like you're hearing the silence, right? Well, how do you hear silence, right? And silence isn't the absence of sound. It's like this absolute like fullness, right? You know what I mean?
uh,
Like within that. you know. And then all the sounds are the different expressions of that, right? So like my personality, your body, my body, those things, those are all expressions of like that absolute like wholeness and like completeness, right?
Yeah, man.
It's like we're like little nodes, you know what I mean? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and you know, like I get those moments where it's just like, you know, like sometimes you're just like hanging out with your dog, your wife, you know, your buddies or whatever, or just like walking down the street, and it's just like it's like the thumb like talking to like the finger, like you know what I mean? It's like you know you're just like it's like the same thing, right? You know what I mean? You're just
Hello.
yeah. You ever see that? You ever see those like little Star Wars movies called Thumb Wars with like they put the little eyeballs? And, you ever see
Yeah.
those?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like that. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, let me ask you about this. So, what I messaged you about this when I asked you to do this. I was on this kick of um, getting into, when the body says no, book from Gabor Mate, and then I've been on a Dispenza Lipton kick too
Mhm. Yeah.
at the same time. And there's this real, it's not a book, it's a talk, but they are selling it as a book. It's Wayne Dyer and Lipton together for like 3 hours. And
Oh, really?
yeah, I think it's from 2012.
That sounds
And
great. Yeah.
like Lipton's and Dispenza's whole kind of epigenetics and very
Uh-huh.
miracle oriented is the way that I'd actually put it. And,
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's the biology of belief.
Yeah.
What's your take, if you have one, on like the way that I was kind of hearing this contrast most recently between like a Gabor Mate orientation and then like a Dispenza maybe Lipton orientation is like Gabor Mate I really like, and I really like the idea of like the trauma in that essentially. And I'm not a mate expert by any means, but the takeaway is like almost like when the body says no, it's almost like your body working against you almost. I don't want to say working against you, but like almost like a less of a signal that's positive and more of a signal that's sickness.
Yeah.
Where I think the Dispenza stuff is more of like, your body might have an expression, but let's focus on the miracles, right? Let's focus on the
Yeah.
what is it, 4 minute or 4.5 minute mile? I think it's 4 minute, like the 4 minute
Yeah. Yeah.
mile, right? Like when you see that that's done, that means anything can happen, right? Do you believe in miracles or not? And where are you at with that kind of, first of all, maybe I'm reading the room wrong in terms of what their kind of ideologies are, but I think that stuff is so fascinating because I think it dictates your belief system is dictating everything,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So what's your take, bro?
Yeah, I mean, your explanation worked well enough for me, you know. It's like eventually like you read so much and you have so much experience and you kind of like you see what's important to you at like a given moment, you know, like yeah, like to me the body is the expression of our spirit, of our soul, right? Which is part of the collective like consciousness and experience, like a source, you know, that silence that we're talking about, right? So like the 4 minute mile, right? Like I like that's one of my favorite things. I was going to do my undergrad and someone brought that up to me and it just like stuck with me. I think one of our teachers brought it up, you know, is that it opens up the possibility that that could happen, right? Now, my thought is that experience of someone breaking the mile, a 4 minute mile, right? It wasn't people seeing it that made it possible. It's the fact that something did it and there was a breakthrough with the collective consciousness, right?
Ah,
Like even like beyond that. So like in a sense, you know, I live in a linear reality with like two eyes, two ears, hopefully a nose left over after my pre-recovery experience, you know, half a nose, right? So like within that, like it's like I think some people refer to it as like the Akashic record, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Like that information is arising from the record, it's encoded in the record, right? And once
Ah,
it's done once, the collective consciousness gets better at knowing how to do that, right? You know what I mean? So like yeah, like that's kind of like how I see that happening, right? But it works both ways. Whether I think I see it or whether I experience it as a deeper sense of knowing that happens like below cognition, right? It could happen either way. But
ah,
I think, yeah, I think like the body builds itself around like a soul or a spirit, that type of information, right? So like going back to like Robert O'Becker's work that Cruz
Yeah.
like talks, right? Bones regenerate, they don't heal, right? The information is already there, right? We just have to bring coherence to the situation, right? We just have to bring coherence to the information, right? Um, so I could be doing trauma work or whatever it is, and that brings a new sense of coherence and clarity with those
Yeah.
internal conflicts. And as a result of that, my body heals better, right? So like I was at a dispenser retreat and I had like this fractured foot, right? And it wasn't getting any better, dude. I got X-rays for like 6 months, for like months, And the guy's like, then I go, and this guy's like, gives me a bone stimulator, right? Which puts an electrical current to it. And I'm reading about all this stuff. I'm like, oh, so you just juice it up, right? I was like, oh, I can do that. So like I start meditating and like, doing some grounding stuff. And it's getting like a little bit better, but it's pretty messed up. And I go to a dispenser retreat where I'm just like meditating for like all day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For like a week. And like about halfway through it, I go to my wife and I'm Kate. I'm like, I think my foot's getting better. It's kind of freaking me out. I don't want to like, I want to run up these stairs, but I'm not going to like, do the Joe thing, We're like, we're like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's like when you like try and fix something and you're like, I'm really proud you fixed it. And you try and make it perfect and you just break it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's on brand for me, right? So I'm like, I'm not gonna do this with my foot. But yeah, like the pain was going away, like in my foot, it was less and less. It was feeling really stable. And I get back and I go have an X-ray, and the doctor's like, "Oh, it's like," I'm like, he's like, "Oh, it's doing really well." I'm like, "Oh, like so? How much longer?" He's like, "It's like healed, man." And he's showing me the X-ray, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "That bone stimulator really worked." I was like, "Yeah, I didn't use the bone stimulator."
Right.
Right? Well, what'd you do? I was just like, well, I just tried to like walk on the ground a lot, and get some sunshine and took a little vitamin D, like a healthy diet. And he's got like his
Yeah.
intern there and he's just like, don't let this guy, you know what I mean? I go, you told me what the bone stimulator did. So I'm like, oh, like I can do that myself. So doing like breath work and shooting like, I was like shooting energy up the spine or whatever it
Yeah.
is. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm like walking ground on the ground barefoot. I'm like, oh, there's my coherence. There's like the coherent signal returning back to earth and nature and things like that. And like, I'm like, oh, it's like, and like it healed. And I've been like good, like ever since. You know what I mean? And he was kind of like explaining to me before. He's like, yeah, things don't always heal. And if it does heal, it may be like this big lump around it and this and that. It's like, it's straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, but yeah, I think, something about that experience there, the intensity of some of those meditations that I had, and the length of sitting in those meditations brought a new sense of coherence to like my spirit, and some things were shed and dropped off that weren't mine, right? And allowed for more, the spirit to like basically regrow the body, and heal the
Yeah.
body in that sense.
When you
So
when
like,
you were just saying coherence, I was just like, yeah, clarity, clarity, and then you said clarity, and I'm like, that's it, bro.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a pinky talking to the thumb, right? You know what I mean? This is all the same, right? So like, and so yeah, like it just helped me like tap into that, right? So like, now I think like communication goes the same way. Like the body can tell us no, but also the soul can tell the body like, okay, it's like ready to heal. You know what I mean?
Well, the body says no. I almost like the idea more of it instead of the body saying no, because to me that's like a negative connotation and maybe
Yeah.
fear based and that kind of stuff, and more of like um, it's almost like when the body's like, "What's up?"
Yeah.
Like it's almost like when the problem, is it a problem or is it a solution or is it an opportunity, right? Like
Yeah.
when the body presents an opportunity for what? For a change in orientation, growth,
Yeah.
a new perspective, a review, a self-inquiry of your belief system, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
to ultimately get to a place, and to me, like within everything we're talking about is like, what's the objective, right? And to me, it's like an objective of, uh, I think, peace, man. When we talk about homeostasis and we talk about content and happiness and joy and peace, that like there's kind of like, the last you were talking about, hey, when you do the breathwork stuff and it just seems like everything's kind of like merged together. And I'm
Yeah.
like, the last time I had that was the breathwork that we did together, with that big group. And I
Yeah.
felt that. you know, and
Yeah.
I felt that in ice baths. I've felt that, um,
Yeah.
even in other more three-dimensional activities that aren't as like cool sounding, but
Yeah.
yeah, that idea of like the merger into the oneness, I think
Yeah.
is what it is. The union and the illusion of our separation,
Yeah.
right? I think is like a big resistance tension point.
Yeah.
Um, which that's what I was wondering too about you, man, because you're so you can just riff forever, and I love it. How do you? Because we both have admitted that we kind of look at the world at large. I don't want to say politics, but maybe we look at the world at large. And I've been a little better at not absorbing that. How do you juggle that? The world at large, where it definitely, from my orientation,
Yeah.
seems like an objective of separation.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then you have your daily practice. How do you reconcile that?
It is it's difficult, and I can get frustrated, I can get angry, I can get hopeless, like looking at the world, right? Um yeah, it's like tough, right? And sometimes like and you can talk to people and like you can be having two totally different conversations, you know what I mean? And I just like watching them, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, yeah. And I just try and be loving and like whatever it is. But I think I've heard you say this before in a sense, I'm probably paraphrasing, but um, like my goal is just to like love people better, right?
Uh,
Like this and that. I've read about enlightenment. I was like, that sounds pretty intense. I don't know if I want to fucking experience that. It's a big ask, right?
yeah,
But if I can love people better, and like not end up on a hill, just like in a state of bliss, like not eating and letting ants eat me, I'd rather like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to play in the game skill, right? I'm trying to like run a business. I'm like trying to like, you
right,
know, like,
right.
connect with my wife, right?
Yeah,
With
yeah,
other
yeah,
people. But yeah, but yeah, just like the world in general. I mean, there's a few different worlds. It's like one is that if I look at social media, I can assume that's the world, and it's like not the world, right?
right.
You know what I mean? It's an amplification, of everything that's out there, right?
Yeah,
All this stuff types that goes on, and you can kind of read it and pick up patterns and like trends, like the zeitgeist and all that type of stuff. But it's not like a local reality. You know what I mean? Of like me just talking to people on work calls, and just shooting the shit with them, or like hanging out with family, hanging out with my wife and dogs, or like we do a morning walk with our dogs every morning. That's like our thing. We take our dogs around and we like wave to all the other dog owners and do all that type of stuff and get some sunshine. Like that's like just like more real to me, right? Um,
yeah. Like
yeah,
what's in front of you, right? Like
yeah,
that's like what's your next lesson, so to speak?
yeah,
What's in front of you? What's God's will?
yeah,
What's in front of you? And what I love what you just shared about too is that quote unquote, like maybe acceptance or self-acceptance or just admission that like I'm a bag of skin
yeah,
living and still playing the three-dimensional game. And
yeah,
that's okay too, because like I think Aja Shante talks a ton about that, about
yeah, yeah,
like, waking up. Most people don't really want. And you were kind of saying that like the awakening process is gritty, right? He talks about, I think
oh
he
yeah,
uses the word gritty. Like it's not a pretty picture. And so when I remember hearing that and I'm like, okay, I don't want enlightenment, right? Like do I
yeah,
like I don't think I want that. Like I
yeah,
still
yeah,
have these three-dimensional things
yeah,
that I kind of want to play with. And like, okay, it's kind of like the spirituality of okay or spirituality of thank you. It's like, oh, okay, as opposed to the like dogmatic kind of like, self-flagellation idea.
yeah,
And then just see where that goes. Like you were talking about like authors and teachings and teachers is kind of like, 10 years ago, let's say, people I was listening to, speakers, books, I'm like, eh. But then today, right? Like, oh wow, whatever that is. Like, it's constant fluidity.
yeah,
Just constant fluidity, and the thing too, like, let's be objective, contentment, peace, being malleable, right?
yeah,
Like, and then like figuring that game out, like how to be adaptive more.
uh,
Again, to I think whatever's in front of me. I definitely believe that the curriculum may have been partially designed by me, whatever that is, you know? What's your take on that? What do you think?
Um, yeah, I kind of think like so this is kind of how I've been seeing it is that like there's this language that happens that's like beyond cognition and beyond like words that I can put outside my mouth, you know. Some people call it like the language of the heart or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's a conversation going on underneath this all, and it's about a conversation of the evolution of our soul, you know. I would say across lifetimes, right? You know what I mean? Like with different incarnations and this and that, right? Then our soul at some point in time says like, yeah, I'm gonna do this love thing, right? You know what I mean? I'm gonna do this love thing. And conscious is like, great, let's do it, right? You know?
I've been waiting.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to put every single thing that's a block to that in front of your face, and it's going to be like it's going to be like the movie Groundhog's Day, right?
Oh,
And I'm going to
yeah,
change the
man.
pieces and the parts, right? Until you can get it, I'm going to allow you the opportunity for this karmic development, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I see that like in my therapeutic and recovery work like all the time, right? I'm like when I'm resentful at a person, I'm like, oh, it's the same dude in a different skin suit. Over and over again, I meet this person over and over and over again, right? But once again, I'm a finger talking to a thumb, and that person's me too, right? You know what I mean? And so I'm going to be given like this opportunity over and over again to like to pass through this stage of my soul's development, right? You know, so like in a sense, like yeah, even like with my addiction, to give you some background, I had my first drink when I was 9, started doing meth when I was like 14, 15, and I got clean and sober when I was 26. That
Yeah.
experience like allowed me to it's like a manifestation of just complete materialism. It's like what it is, right? You know, that allowed me to the ability to confront that and have almost like what I would call like an emptying, right? Because spirituality and spiritual growth isn't about ascension, right? It's about dropping things that are like little artifacts that are like disrupting the process along the way, right? So it allowed me to like to break into that and have that experience, right? You know, that rock bottom experience, like the physical rock bottom experience, and like the emptying of a soul essentially to allow like what's beyond that to come through, right? I mean, that's how life is. There's a lot of emphasis like on longevity and like being alive, but like it's a cycle of life. Cells die and new cells come in, right? You have to be
Yeah.
willing to let things die for new things to come in. There's a clinical like term for it when an organ keeps on growing. It's called cancer, right? It's called a tumor, right? You know what I mean? Like we don't like want that. We want balance within that. So like
Yeah.
I feel like there was like some like choice I made. This guy wasn't part of this process, right? You know, to experience that. Now I'm presented with karmic opportunities in this, you know, spiritual sandbox to address those on every single day, right? And sometimes I want them to be very glamorous, and sometimes they're not. I talk to insurance companies all day, and these people like believe in like
God
what they're
bless
saying.
you, by the way.
They believe in what they're saying. And like I usually I do pretty well, but other times I get pissed. I'm like, what about myself thinks this is going to be any different, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why am I expecting like this to happen? But uh, this thing came across. I got a little note by my computer. It says, I respect your integrity. I honor that quality you possess, and I treat you as such, right? So they're completely integritous, right? They're following what the definition of integrity has been laid out from to a T. They're trying to be good employees, good this, good
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean? To whatever their programming is and their life experiences, they really believe and they're doing the best they can with it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like not their fault that like they work for like a system that has like it's disgusting, you know, like
Yeah.
as far as that works. So I'm like, okay, like how can I practice love in this moment? And I swear every time I'm about to get into it and like tell them the truth about something, I look at that and I'm just like, okay, oh, I'm about 9 out of 10. I think there was one lady I just like told her the truth about it, you know, but I'm like, that does like nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's not, this person's just like trying to like, this is like a semi-retired social worker that's just trying to like, you know, put the landing gear on and finish out her life. Like, why am I going to talk to her about it? You know what I mean?
What I'm hearing, and I got one more big topic. I don't know if it's a big topic, but I have one more topic that you danced into without me asking you. Thank you, by the way. But
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is like that whole like kind of judge not lest ye be judged, you
Yeah.
know? And the dogs, I was told when I was getting sober early on, the dogs of judgment always bite their own master, which is
Yeah,
kind of like that whole I drink the poison and watch you die
yeah,
when I have a quote unquote resentment, right? Which
yeah,
is just we call it the re-feeling, but it's the resistance to what is. So like
yeah,
the resistance is, that's right, the devil's in the negotiation.
yeah,
You're bringing up addiction. I want to ask you about the idea of powerlessness
yeah,
and what is your. Let me give you a framework to help. When I think, at least I'll speak for myself, getting into again back to like epigenetics, Dispenza miracle stuff. To me, that's very much about the opposite of powerlessness in the sense that anything's possible, right? And an empowerment of miracles. Where are you at with the idea of powerlessness over substances? Let's use that.
yeah. Um, so it's so what's interesting about so like you take something like A's Big Book, right? Is that it talks about things in a different way from where you start, like someone's relationship with God. God is transcendent, right? You know, and you go through this process, and it starts talking about the great reality deep within, where God is immanent, right?
Uh,
You know what I mean? Over the course of that process, right? You know, powerlessness can the definition is lacking strength or resource, right?
uh,
In the context of the positionality of materialism, in the world of like, the ego and its lack of awareness that it's an ego and it has a limited perception, right? From that moment, the ego, which is, if you look at it, like ego's like, you got a million different people demonize it. It's really just a process, part of our process of evolution. We never be here without it, right?
uh,
It's a tool. It's part of us. You know what I mean? We just got to understand its limitations, right? Um, and like, not having a God consciousness or a deep connection with the higher power, I think the statement of I am powerless, which is the I, over alcohol and drugs, is a fair assessment. It allows the ego to let go of its delusion of power arise from itself. And within that moment, I think in a split second, and it's not when you say the step, right? It happens when it happens, right? It's nonlinear, right? It allows us to open up to like the collective I, to where there's infinite power, right?
uh,
So it's like it's basically a statement of like limitation from the ego, right? So the ego operates off this period of the way I see it, the ego operates off this idea that it's independent of anything and needs nothing, right? I found this card. I was cleaning up my office, right? And I think I wrote this. Maybe I stole it. Maybe I wrote it. I don't know. It looks like I wrote it because there's a lot of errors in it, right? So, but it says the only form of disease, and I have like a hyphen, dis-ease,
right.
is the delusion of disconnection from the source. What we
Uh,
experience when we feel disconnection is not always the starting point of disconnection, but the conscious realization that we are not connected, right? So like when we talk about trauma, we talk about a break or like whatever it is, right? So like yeah, basically it's like you're falling out of the Garden of Eden, whatever it is, right? Um, so like in a sense, when I look at the word powerlessness, I think the statement is true and untrue both at the same time, right? And I think you can have I am powerless. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, right? And our lives becoming manageable is the first step, right? But also with that same breath, we have access to infinite power and infinite source, like within that same breath. As long as we see the limitations of our life lived in isolation, being in isolation from our peers, our fellows, our forefinger, you know what I mean?
yeah.
The arm that connects this type of thing, right? And I think the step says we admitted we were powerless. We were powerless. It's
Right.
past tense.
Past tense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that our lives had become unmanageable, right? So like,
Yeah.
I have to make concessions in a sense. I understand the limitations of myself, if I want to accept outside help. And I don't think that happens when someone writes that statement up or says it, right? It happens on a deeper type of level. And I believe it happens well before someone stops taking a drink. You know what I mean? The head may say that, the words may say that, right? But deeper truths like that, um, deeper truths like that don't need justification, right? It's just the truth that we're all connected. We have an infinite source of power, right? And it's accessible to anybody, right? Now the challenge with that is that because there is an infinite source of infinite love and healing and all these type of things, that same guy that small self, wants to take credit for that and promote that right afterwards as its own, right?
Right.
Which immediately like puts us back into the cycle of those certain things. So there's little hooks, I think that one gets into spiritual egotism or spiritual materialism, which like you want to see some of that, like go on Instagram, right? There's probably like thousands and thousands of people who claim enlightenment, but the reality is that enlightenment wouldn't claim it enlightenment because there's no one to claim it, right? Like how do you know someone's not enlightened? They'll tell you they're enlightened, right? You know what I mean? Like
It's like, I am so virtuous, like that, right? Like
yeah,
that.
totally. Yeah, yeah. And that's the hook. So like I think you were talking earlier, you were talking about like uh um you're talking about something about resentment. And the quote that came up in my head, right? It was like taking poison, expecting the other person to die,
Yeah.
or like judge not, lest be judged. We see the world as we see it is another one. But I think there's like a Asian one from one of those disciplines that says, when you eat the dragon, you become the dragon, right? In that type
Uh,
of sense. So through like self-righteous indignation, right? Essentially, like because I'm a thumb and they're a pinky finger, right? I'm like having a little like thumb pinky war with them still, right?
yeah.
And I'm attacking myself. I'm attacking iterations of like myself, right? In that
Yeah.
type of sense. That's one of the values that I don't think a lot of people get. Like there's so much value in like turning your life into a dumpster fire and saying like, yeah, I turned my life into a dumpster fire. People I had a guy like I loaned money, he didn't pay me back, and I'm just like, yeah, I've done that one, man. you know,
Right.
I am like free from
Right.
resentment. You know what I mean? I've done all these things, so it allows us like I mean, that's how I gotta get compassion. I gotta do it. I'm sure you can get vicarious compassion from people from just having like whatever, but by making a list of all those things you've done, right, and learn how to forgive yourself with that. At the same time, we're just a thumb forgiving our pinky finger at the same time. So we become more permissive and things like that. Now, like that's the theory in practice. So I still get mad. I'm like, yeah, I get pissed, and like
Yeah.
sometimes, I'm a big fan of like holding people in judgment for a bit, or like talking a little crap about them and stuff like
It's
that.
the best.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'm like, well, like that ship sailed, man. Now I become kind of loving again because, like, I don't feel any better, right? Like,
Well, there's something to that, like kind of what you're speaking to is that idea of like leaning into the edge, but that okay, like you got to burn the whole wick out. I remember I was newer
yeah,
and
yeah. Burn the whole
being
way. Yep.
sober, and I was talking to several different people, and I was having trouble with women, and a lot of people were like, it's not shaming me, but shaming me, whatever that means, right?
Yeah,
In the context of reality and the infinite, but like basically like stop doing that. And I
yeah,
remember that I talked to this one cat who was sober forever, and he started to kind of nudge me to do it harder, right? And I'm
yeah.
like, and I'm like,
Go all in. Yeah,
and I'm like, bro, what are you, what are you saying, right? And he's like, dude, you got to burn the whole wick out. I can't do it for you, and like that idea. And it's like, what the other thing, dude, that you were talking about that made me think of was like Ram Dass talking about the cosmic giggle, like
right.
that. It's like the paradox of it all. Yeah, I'm powerless and not powerless. It's like, oh, you gotta, how do you let go? You gotta hang on, right? It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the cosmic giggle of the whole thing.
yeah, yeah.
And like, what a trip. right? Like literally, as a sober person, like I'm having a trip, like
Yeah, yeah,
experiencing life in the raw,
yeah.
is
And it's the wildest trip there ever is, and none of it's planned, and no one can sign up and willingly do any of this, right? Like, it just cracks me up.
so, brother, I love you. I deeply appreciate you.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop recording so we can chit chat about secret things after, but
Ooh.
you've crushed it. I love you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Mr. Joe.
Thank you, man. Love you, man. Just always great talking with you. I'm just glad our paths crossed. You know what I mean? And you asked the question, asked me how much I meditate. And then I was like, oh, that's it. No, that's just how much I meditate. And then we got a thing.
Oh, God. Peace.